Good morning everyone and a very warm welcome to this week's edition of Azure Dan, the Cloud and Proud Sessions. So let's think about what we did last week. Now last week we were interested in storage and presence. If you cast your mind back, we planned and implemented Azure Storage including SMB shares. We implemented backup solutions and finally we deployed websites and then used Traffic Manager to distribute a request based on geolocation. In this week's edition, we're going to look at Azure AD and databases. So we will focus on joining our local and Azure Active Directories together using AD Connect with password synchronization. We'll explore multi-factor authentication using the Azure Authenticator and password WriteBack to our local AD. We will then focus on single sign-on application access and Azure AD reporting. Finally, we will build and deploy an Azure PaaS SQL instance and populate it with some sample data. By the end of our session, we'll be able to synchronize Active Directory into Azure, use multi-factor authentication, understand password WriteBack, understand role-based access control, be able to interpret Azure AD reporting, understand single sign-on access, and create a PaaS SQL instance. Okay, so let's just review where we're at the moment. Now, if you cast your mind back to session 2, then we went ahead and we created a number of IaaS virtual machines, one of which was a domain controller. Okay, so I'm remoted into this, so let's just click on this machine. So I've remoted into my domain controller. And if you cast your mind back, we created a domain. So mine was called cloudandproud.local, and in there we created an organizational unit and we've put some user accounts in there. Now I put a couple of wrestlers in there to keep my son happy, and I also created one called local AD, which I made an enterprise admin. Now we're going to use this when we use the AD Connect tool to bridge this domain controller with our Azure AD. Okay, so let's take a look at how we achieved that. So it's worth noting that I can't do this currently in the new portal. Okay, so we need to go over to the original portal, which is going to be at manage.windowsazure.com. And from there, what I want to do is I want to drill down and I want to look at Active Directory. Now you'll notice on mine that I have a number of directories already there. Okay, and these are just from past demos and personal projects. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to build a completely new Active Directory. And to do this, all I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and click on New. And from here, I'm going to click on Directory. But notice I can also do this for access control and multi-factor authentication providers. For me, I'm going to click on Directory and I'm going to hit Custom Create. Now this top one is interesting. If we look at the directory, we can either create a new directory or we can import an existing one. Now what I mean by that is if I've used Office 365 in the past, then that will have an Azure AD. What I can do is by using an existing directory, I can authenticate using an existing user account, and that will bridge those two directories together. We're going to go ahead and create a new directory, and I'm going to call mine Cloud and Proud, so C&P. Okay, my domain name is going to be cndp.onmicrosoft.com. Okay, and we can see that this one is already in use. Okay, so let's try Cloud and Proud. So Cloud and Proud.onmicrosoft.com is fine. So let's just change that. Okay, and then finally we're going to go down and we're going to select our country or region. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to select the United Kingdom. Okay, so from here I'm going to go ahead and complete, and we'll just allow that one to build, so that'll take a moment or two and then we can continue. Okay, and we can see that Cloud and Proud is completed and is now active. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Cloud and Proud, and let's just take a look at what we have here. Okay, so on our initial splash page, we can see that our directory is ready to use, and there's a few options to get started. Okay, so we can go in and improve the user sign-on experience by adding a proper domain. We can choose to integrate with our local Active Directory, and we can do this by downloading the Azure AD Connect. Finally, we can get Azure AD Premium. Now that will improve access management experiences for end users and administrators, including self-service password reset, group management, sign-in customization, and reporting. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move through some of these tabs, and then we'll configure this. Okay, so let's start off with our users. Now we can see that I've got Daniel Baker Live, which is taking my original live account, so daniel@danielbaker.info. Okay, but what I want to do here is I want to go ahead and I want to create a new user account. Okay, now I want to create a new user account, which is going to be the administrative account on this side. If you cast your mind back, we created a local AD on our domain controller. I'm now going to create an Azure AD administrative account this side that allows me to connect them both together when we use the AD Connect tool. So to do this, I'm going to come down and say Add User. It's going to be a new user in the organization, so cloudandproud.onmicrosoft.com, and I'm going to call this Azure AD. So Azure AD at cloudandproud.onmicrosoft.com. Let's go next. I'm going to call this Azure AD. And what I want to do is, for the role, I want to make this particular user a global admin. Now think of a global admin like an on-prem enterprise admin. Okay, but I can use a standard user, a global admin, a billing admin, a service admin, a user admin, and a password admin. So I'm going to choose global admin. Okay, my alternative email address is going to be Daniel@info. Okay, and I've got the option for this account. Do I want to enable multi-factor authentication? Well, at this stage I don't, so I'm going to go ahead and say next, and from here I'm going to get a temporary password. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit create, and that's going to come back with a new password for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up Notepad, and just to make life a little easier for myself, I'm going to go ahead and copy my new user account and paste that into my Notepad. And I'm going to take the password and I'm going to paste that into. Okay, now the reason I'm doing that is obviously I'll need to change the password the first time I log on, so I want to go ahead and do that in a moment. So it's okay, and that account is now created. So I've got my Azure AD at cloudandproud.onmicrosoft.com. Okay, now I want to authenticate using this account, and I also want this account to have access to my subscription. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to come back, and in my original portal I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and select settings. Now under settings I want to go in and add a new administrator. So I come across, I can see I've got my subscriptions, my management certificates, affinity groups, remote app usage, and so on. But I want to click on administrators, and from here I'm going to go ahead and add, and we're going to type in that email address. So Azure AD at cloudandproud.onmicrosoft.com. Okay, and it's accepted that. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and I'm going to bind it to my Visual Studio MSDN subscription. So let's go ahead and OK that. And we can see that that account has now been successfully added as a co-administrator. Okay, so let's quickly go back into our Active Directory. Let's go back into Cloud and Proud, and let's just explore these other tabs. So we've looked at users. If we come across to groups, we can see that we can go in and we can add groups just like we would in standard Active Directory. So I go ahead, I can add a group, give it a name and a description. From there I can add members, all of which we will do in a moment. We come across, we have applications, and we can use this for single sign-on. So again, we'll take a look at this once our directories are synchronized. If I come across to domains, here's where I can add my own custom domain and break away from the subdomain of onmicrosoft.com. If I come across to directory integration, here's where I would activate directory integration between an on-prem and Azure AD. I can come across to configure. Now from configure, I can enable things like the name. I can choose my notifications. I can go in and choose how I want devices to join Azure AD and if users can register it. I can choose whether or not I want to turn on some preview features such as domain services, which would give me group policy support with my Azure AD. I can choose about integrated applications and user access. Now, I will get more options on the configure page once I've enabled Active Directory Premium. So let's take a look at reports. And again, you can see that we have a subset of reports that we can use in our Azure AD. So I can look at suspicious activity, integrated applications, external access, but you can see there's a whole bunch of premium reports in there too. So I'm going to go ahead and click on licenses. From licenses, we can see that I can try Active Directory Premium, or I've actually got the option to try the Enterprise Mobility Suite. Now with the Enterprise Mobility Suite, it will give me Active Directory Premium, but it will also give me access to Microsoft Intune and Azure Rights Management. Now for the sake of these sessions, I'm not going to bother with Rights Management or Intune, so I'm going to go ahead and try Active Directory Premium now. So I'm going to click on here. And it says, activate your Azure AD Premium trial. The Azure Active Directory Premium enhances your directory with additional features that include multi-factor authentication, policy-driven management, and end-user self-service. Okay, so the trial will be active for 30 days. So that's fine for our demo. So I'm going to go ahead and activate that, and that'll take a minute to do. Okay, so it's just setting up. So we'll come back in a moment. And we're back, and we can see that our Azure Active Directory Premium is now active. I've got 100 active units, but nothing assigned. So if I want to assign accounts, and we will come back and do this after we've synchronized our Active Directories, but just to show you, if I click on here, I'm going to come down to assigned licenses to users. Okay, and from here, I'm going to drop down all users and hit the tick, and then from there all I'm going to do is select my Azure AD at Cloud and Proud. So I'm going to go ahead and assign this user, and we can see that user's now been assigned. Okay, if we come back, you can see that we can also enable directory features. Okay, so if we go in and enable directory features, it takes us back to this configure page, but it now gives us more options. You'll see that we'll be able to go in there, and this time we can customize branding. We can enable user password reset policies, so users enabled for password reset. Okay, we can choose if we're going to restrict access to password resets. Okay, so we'll come back and revisit this in a moment, but what I want to do now is look at getting these directories synchronized. So I'm going to do this by connecting up to the domain controller. Again, before we do this though, I'm just going to make sure I've got a copy of this user account that I can authenticate to. So I'm going into my domain controller, and from here I'm just going to go into Internet Explorer, and I'm connecting up to the manage.windowsazure.com. So it now wants me to authenticate. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in that user account. and then I'll need to paste in the password. So I'm just going to minimize this, back into my notepad, and take that temporary password, and then back into the main controller, and we're going to paste that temporary password in. Now what's going to happen is as soon as this authenticates, it's going to invite us to change that password. So we'll paste that current password back in, and then I'm going to use the one that we've been using throughout all of these sessions. So capital P A $W0RD 123, capital P A $W0RD 123. Okay, so from here let's go ahead, update our password and sign in. Okay, now it's saying don't lose access to your account. Add information to your account so you don't lose access if you ever forget your password. Okay, so let's go ahead and set this up now. Okay, I'm going to select my user account. I'm going to enter my password. And we'll just sign in. Okay, so don't lose access to your account. To make sure you can reset your password, we need to collect some info so we can verify who you are. We won't use this to spam you, just to keep your account more secure. You'll need to set up at least 2 of the options below. So it wants an authentication phone and an authentication email. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to go ahead and set those 2 authentication methods up now. I invite you to do the same, and once that's done we'll come back and we'll continue. And we're back, and we're authenticated as our Azure AD at cloudandproud.onmicrosoft.com from our domain controller. So now what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to look at integrating these 2 directories. And I'm going to do it from where we are now. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my Cloud and Proud directory. And it's just popped up with let's talk about Azure AD, and someone will contact you. So I'm just going to come out of here. And what I want to do is I want to integrate with my local directory, so use the same user accounts and groups in the cloud that you already use on premise. So I'm going to download Azure AD Connect. Okay, so we've got Microsoft Azure Active Directory Connect. We can see we've got the download button here, so let's go ahead and click on this guy. And do we want to run or save Azure AD Connect MSI? So I'm going to go ahead and say run, and that will download in the background. Now that shouldn't take too long, a moment or two. And with that done, we can proceed with the installer. So installing Microsoft Azure AD Connect, please wait while the setup installs the components. So we just allow the wizard to run. Okay, while we're waiting, we'll minimize this. Okay, so welcome to Azure AD Connect. Run this installation tool on the server where the synchronization service component will be installed. Azure AD Connect integrates your on-premise and online directories. This installation tool will guide you in selecting a solution, install the identity synchronization and any other software components required, and then verify the integration of our 2 directories. So I'm going to agree to our terms and say continue. And I've got 2 options here. Now, I can choose to use customize or use express settings. If I use express settings, it's going to configure synchronization of the identities in the current forest, Cloud and Proud, configure password synchronization between the 2, start initial synchronization, and synchronize all attributes. And that's going to be fine for what we need. However, I want to show you the full settings, so I'm going to click on customize. So no existing synchronization services were found on this computer. The Azure AD Connect synchronization service will be installed. Do we need any optional configurations? Well, I don't need to specify a custom installation location. I'm not using a SQL server. I don't need to use an existing service account, and I don't want to specify any custom sync groups. So I'm just going to go ahead and say install, and it will go ahead and start installing all of the components that are required for this service to run. Okay, and that's now done, so we can select our single sign-on method. We've got password synchronization, federation with ADFS, or we can choose not to configure. Now we're going to choose password synchronization, which is going to create a duplicate account in our Active Directory, our Azure Active Directory, and then synchronize the passwords between them. Okay, so we're going to choose password synchronization. We're going to say next. Now we need to connect into our Azure AD, so it wants our Azure AD credentials, and if you cast your mind back, that was the global admin account that we created earlier in this session. So I'm going to minimize this window. I'm going to open up my notepad and once again copy this user account, and then I'm going to paste and type in the password. And we can see that it's connecting to Microsoft Online to verify the credentials. Okay, and with those credentials validated, it's now going to invite us to connect to our local directory. So we can see it's Active Directory. I'm going to select my forest, so I'm going to select my cloudandproud.local, and my username is going to be Cloud and Proud, and I'm going to use that local AD account that we created in a previous session. Now remember, this is an enterprise account. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to enter the password credentials and add that directory. From here I'm going to say next and allow the wizard to proceed. Okay, so you can see it's retrieving the directory schema and the wizard will move on. So it now looks at uniquely identifying our users. So select how users should be identified in your on-premise directories. Users are represented once across all directories, or users' identities exist across multiple directories and match using either a mal attribute or an object SID or the SAM account name, or we can pick a specific attribute. Okay. Select how users should be identified with Azure AD. So we can use the source anchor object GUID, the globally unique ID, and we can use the user principal name, the UPN. So that's fine. We're going to say next. We can choose to filter to a specific portion of our Active Directory, but I'm going to say synchronize all users and devices. And it's important to note that this will only be the devices we've added. It's the user accounts we've added. This won't be the built-in user accounts. So let's say next. For optional features, we can go in and there's a number of optional features that we can select, but the one that we do want is this password WriteBack. So what this will enable us to do is change our password online and it will automatically write back onto our on-prem directory. So let's say next. And we can see ready to configure. Once you click install upgrade, we will do the following. Configure synchronization services on this computer. Do we want to start the synchronization process as soon as the configuration completes? Yes. And we've also got the option to sort of test enable staging mode. So when selected, synchronization will not export any data to AD or Azure AD. So it's like a test environment. So this is fine. I want to leave this one ticked to start the synchronization, but this one unticked. So let's go ahead and say install. And we'll allow that to finish the installation and then begin the initial synchronization. So that's going to take about 10 minutes. So we'll pause the video and we'll come back when that's done. And we're back, and we can see that configuration is complete. We can now log on to the Azure or Office 365 portal to verify that user accounts from our local directory have been created. Then do a test sign on to the Azure portal. Okay, so let's exit out of this and let's minimize this domain controller for a moment and go back in to our Azure portal. Now from our Azure portal, if we click on the Cloud and Proud directory and come across to users, we can now see that we have our John Cena, our Randy Alton, and our local AD in there. Okay, but what you'll notice is because it's password synchronization and not fed services, it's actually duplicated the account and put it onto our Cloud and Proud on Microsoft extension. But remember, the passwords will be synchronized between them. So let's go ahead and test log on to this. Okay, so we're now starting to look at our user experience. You can see that I've got a Windows mobile and I've got a standard user's desktop. Now, this is a fresh installation of Windows 10. Nothing's been configured, so we're going to use this for some of our Azure AD testing. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to click onto Internet Explorer, and I just want to make sure that I can authenticate as that John Cena account. Now to do this, I'm going to go to myapps.microsoft.com, and then from myapps.microsoft.com, what I want to do is I want to connect up as John Cena. So I'm going to be Cena J at cloudandproud.onmicrosoft.com. Okay, we're going to go ahead and continue. And it says we need the password. So let's go ahead and type in the password. And we'll go ahead and sign in. Okay, so we can see that Azure AD is now authenticated us. Now don't worry that there are no applications available. We can sort that out in a moment. But for now, we've proven that we can authenticate using Azure AD as Cena J at cloudandproud.onmicrosoft.com. So switching back into our Azure portal, what I now want to do is I want to go ahead and add John Cena into our enhanced Active Directory. So if you cast your mind back, we created the licenses. So we had 100 licenses in there. I'm going to go ahead and click on Azure Active Directory Premium, and from there I want to assign some users. So I'm going to go ahead and select all users and hit the tick box, and from here I now want to select John Cena and assign. Now what this is going to allow me to do is set up multi-factor authentication for him. So with that done, I'm going to go back. I should now see that I've got 2 users assigned. And if I come back across to users in my Azure AD, what I can now do is I can enable multi-factor authentication. So I'm going to click on Manage Multi-Factor Authentication. And I want to enable it for John Cena. So when I click on John Cena, okay, so I can see I've got John Cena, Cena J at cloudandproud.onmicrosoft.com. I want to enable multi-factor authentication. So about enabling multi-factor authentication, please read the deployment guide. If your users are not regularly signing through the browser, you can send them to this link to register. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say enable multi-factor authentication and close. And if I click on John Cena, I can now come across and I actually want to enforce it. So I'm going to click on enforce, and it says again, after multi-factor authentication is enforced, users will need to create app passwords to use non-browser applications such as Outlook and Link. For security reasons, apps passwords are not available to admins who will be able to sign in only with the browser. Okay, so let's say enable multi-factor authentication, and we can see that that's been updated successfully. So John Cena, we can now go in and connect to him. But I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to do this via this portal here. Okay, so again, I'm now going to sign out, And I'm going to choose to sign in again as John Cena. So let's type in his password and sign in. Okay, now we can see your admin has required that you set up this account for additional security verification. So we're going to choose to set up now. Okay, and it says secure your account by adding phone verification to your password. So how should we contact you? So authentication phone, office phone, or the mobile app. So I'm going to choose the mobile app. Okay, how do you want to use the mobile app? Receive notifications for verification or use a verification code. So I'm going to receive notifications for verification. Okay, we can see it's now configuring the mobile app. So with that done, complete the following steps to configure your mobile app. Install the Azure Authenticator for Windows Phone, Android or iOS. In the app, tap Add Account, which will launch the camera and scan the image below. So we're going to go ahead and set that up now. Okay, so on my Windows Phone, I'm going to go into the Azure Authenticator, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the plus, and from there it opens up the camera. So with the camera open, I'm now pointing at the screen, and we can see that it's now setting up our Cloud and Proud for Senna J. Okay, so with that done, let's go ahead and click on Finish. And allow it to check the activation status. Okay, we can see the mobile app has now been configured. And we move on to the next additional step. Okay, so back over to the phone, tap Verify to complete your sign-in verification. So let's verify. You have successfully completed the sign-in. Let's close that. Okay, so the last thing that we need to do is fill in step 3 of our security verification, and it just wants us to put in a mobile number so it can contact us in case we lose the app. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video and we'll come back once I've entered the number. And we're back. So just as a final reminder before we complete this wizard, in some apps such as Outlook, Apple Mail and Office, you can't use a phone to secure your account. To use these apps, you'll need to create a new app password to use in place of your work or school account password. So it says get started with this app password. So typically you'd need to copy this before continuing. We're not going to be using any of these features, so I'm just going to go ahead and say finish. Okay, and with that done, it now takes us back into our Active Directory. Okay, so it comes up, your administrator has required you to verify your contact info. You can use this to reset the password if you ever lose access to your account. Okay, so let's go ahead and verify now. And it says don't lose access to your account. To make sure that you can reset your password, we need to collect some info so that we can verify who you are. We don't use this to spam you, we'll just use it to make your account more secure. So it knows that we've got an authentication phone that we need to verify, and we need to put in an authentication email address. So I'm going to go ahead and verify the phone. Okay, and I'm going to get it to text me. And they're going to send a code to my phone, which we can see, which we're now going to paste into here. Okay, so let's select our message. We can see that we've got a new message from Microsoft verification, and we've got a code that we need to type in. So it's 957590. Let's hit verify, and we can see that our phone is now authenticated. So what we'll do is we're going to set up an authentication email address. So let's set that up, and we're going to authenticate as Daniel.Baker at Microsoft.com. So let's go ahead and ask them to email me. And once that comes through, we'll put in the code. So that's now verified, so let's go ahead and finish. And it takes us back into our account. So with multi-factor authentication set up, let's go ahead and join John's Windows 10 machine into the Azure AD domain. So I'm going to come down and click on Cortana, and I'm just going to search for domain, and we can see rename your PC or join to a domain. So I'm going to select this option, and from here I'm going to choose to join this machine into Azure AD. So when I click on this machine, what happens next? If your organization uses Office 365 or other business services from Microsoft, we'll enroll this device with your organization. Your organization might collect information about you. It might also install or remove apps, change settings or disable features, delete content or reset your device. Let's go ahead and say next. Okay, so let's get us signed in. So we're going to connect up as Sina J at cloudandproud.onmicrosoft.com, and we'll go ahead and enter his password. Okay, and from there we'll sign in. Okay, so it's going to send across a code to my mobile device, and we can see we've received a sign-in verification. So if I open up my Azure Authenticator, and we're going to go ahead and verify, and we can see that we have successfully completed the sign-in. So this should now continue. There we go. So make sure this is your organization. So we're connecting to cloudandproud.onmicrosoft.com. We're connecting to Sina J at Cloud and Proud, and the user type is going to be an administrator. So let's go ahead and join. And we're done. Our machine is now connected to the Cloud and Proud organization. So I just want to move back into the portal, because I think what might be a nice idea now is for us to start customizing the experience for my Azure AD users. So I'm going to go ahead and come up to Configure, and under Configure, just wait for that to load. Under Configure, what I want to do is I just want to customize the sign-in and access panel page appearance. So I'm going to come across to Customize Branding. Now from here you can see I can put in some banner logos and different placeholder user IDs and text headings and so on. So I'm going to go in and say, welcome to Cloud and Proud. And we're just going to put in some text. So welcome to the Cloud and Proud single sign-on portal. Okay, we're just going to say next, and I think what we want to do is we want to go in and put a sign-in page illustration. So I'm just going to browse, and under my pictures I'm just going to go ahead and select my wallpaper. And from there, let's go ahead and OK. So we're just going to update that branding for Cloud and Proud. So we'll wait for that to complete. And we'll dismiss. So that's now done. If we come down, we'll just check our password reset policy. Now we set this up earlier in this session, so we just see that we can users are enabled for password reset. Did we want to restrict access to password reset to certain users or groups? Now if you cast your mind back, we had to set up a mobile phone, an alternative email address, but we could have got in and specified an office phone or security questions. The number of authentication methods needed to be satisfied for a password reset. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on applications, because now what we're going to do is we're going to enable some single sign-on applications for our My Apps portal. Okay, so from here I'm going to go ahead and add, and we've got the option to add an application my organization is developing, an application from the gallery, or publish an application that will be accessible from outside the network. So we're going to say add an application from the gallery. Now you'll see that there are over 2,500 applications here that we can add and take advantage of a single sign-on. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put in tabs like, I don't know, so Facebook. Let's go ahead and add Facebook. So let's search for Facebook, and I'm going to select Facebook and put a tick in, and we'll just wait for that application to install. Okay, so Facebook app has been added. So what I want to do is I want to assign accounts. And I'm going to go ahead, now typically you'd use groups, I'm going to say all users, and I'm going to go ahead and say John Cena and assign. Now it says this action would allow the selected user to authenticate to the Facebook application from within the Access panel. Users can enter and update their Facebook credentials using the Access panel at any time. Okay, so do we want to allow them to do it, or are we going to enter the credentials on behalf of the user and we can sort of populate it from there? I'm going to leave that blank and say OK. And then once that's updated, I'm then going to go back and I'm going to add another application. So let's just drag down and let's say add. So an application from the gallery, and let's just go ahead and say Twitter this time. So we're focusing on our social media in these demos. So Twitter. And from here again I can assign accounts. I'm going to select my all users. And from here I'm going to select John Cena. Do I want to enter the credentials? Well, yes I do on this instance. So in this instance I want to enter the credentials. My username is going to be @Azure Dan, and my password, I'm going to go ahead and enter my password. Okay, let's try that again. And okay, so we'll just allow that one to update. And with dismiss. Now obviously I can do this for, you know, hundreds and thousands of applications, but in the interest of time we're going to leave that there. So let's minimize this window, go back into this John Cena profile, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to sign out and then we'll sign back in as John Cena and we'll see the changes. So in order for this to work, I'm just going to go in and under my internet options I'm just going to clean all this down. Okay, so I'm going to clean all of my internet options down and close Internet Explorer. Okay, from here let's go ahead and open it up again, and we're going to go into My Apps.Microsoft.com. Now what should happen, My Apps.Microsoft.com. Now what should happen is once I put in my Cena J at cloudandproud.onmicrosoft.com, as we authenticate into our Active Directory, our page should change, and we can see, look, we now have Welcome to the Cloud and Proud SSO portal. Okay, and we have our custom background. If I go in and enter my credentials, and sign in, what we'll now see is under our applications, once we've authenticated. Okay, so let's just connect up, go into our Azure Authenticator. We're going to verify, and we can see that we've successfully verified. Now once we go in, we should now see that we have a couple of applications assigned to us, and we can see that I've got Facebook and we can see that I've got Twitter. Now because I supplied the credentials for Twitter, When I click on this, what it will do is it will redirect me. So before it does this, it wants me to install some software. So let's install now. Do you want to run the Access Panel Extensions MSI? So let's go ahead and run that. And we'll just run through the wizard. And yes. Okay, so let's finish that. Let's try that one more time then. Okay, so let's go ahead and enable this and restart Internet Explorer. So we'll need to authenticate again, but we should see it work this time. So let's go into myapps.microsoft.com. We're going to connect to Cena J. We're going to authenticate and sign in. That will send the code to our Azure Authenticator. We're going to verify our credentials, which are successful. The page will then update. We can now go back into our Twitter application and it will redirect us directly into Twitter, populate the username and password, and take us directly into our account. Okay, so we've had a look at Azure AD, we've looked at password synchronization, we've looked at multi-factor authentication, we've looked at single sign-on and Active Directory customization. But what I wanted to do is I just wanted to come back to our new portal to really highlight some of the reasons we might have done this. Now, obviously by syncing those accounts across, it means that the resources that we have in our Azure Cloud can now take advantage of single sign-on. But we can also use this for role-based access control. If you think in our organization, we've got people that are looking after our core network, we've got people that are looking after our virtual machines and our storage and our web presence and our databases and stuff like that. What role-based access control allows us to do is really specify who can access what and in what context. So for instance, if I come across to my virtual machine resource group and click in there, okay, if I move into my resource group, you can see that I've got my virtual machines, my virtual machine disk, and the cloud service. But if I move up and click on access, I can choose who has access to these particular services. So from here I can click on roles and add. Now if I click on roles, I can see that there are a whole bunch of roles once it's loaded that enable different levels of access into this service. So I've got owners, contributors, readers, and you can see there are a number of different roles in there. Now from here, if I come back and click on add, I can start tailoring who can access it. So I might want to say, well, as a reader, I want to enable, and I can go in and type in the user. So you can see that these users have now come across. So I can go down and I can say that John Cena is a reader. I'll just add that. Okay, so John Cena is a reader to the virtual machines in the Cloud and Proud cloud. So what does that look like for the John Cena account then? Well, if I open up a new tab and we go into portal.azure.com, and what we're going to do is we're going to sign in as John Cena. Okay, so I've signed in as John Cena. Okay, and we can see that I can see my Cloud and Proud domain controller, member server 2, I can see my cloud and I can see my disk. But what it won't allow me to do is add resources. Okay, now what's a little frustrating about this is it will go through the motions. So if I go through into compute, if I want to add a Windows Server 2012 data center, and we're going to go ahead and create. Okay, we just wait for that to update. Okay, so if I go in and start creating a machine, select our resource group, so put it into VMs. If I go in and go test VM, and then the credentials, I'm not going to bother entering anything else, but if I hit create, I should see it fail. Okay, and we can see an error creating the Windows Server 2012 R2 data center. So it waits right until the end to effectively tell me that I don't have the authorization to perform this action. Okay, but we can see that John Cena has the ability to view and read, but not perform any add-ons to this resource group. Okay, so hopefully we now have a really good understanding about the integration between on-prem and Azure AD, the synchronization, using the AD Connect tool, multi-factor authentication and synchronizations. Okay, what I want to do now is I just want to have a quick look at building an Azure SQL database. Now, to be fair, we're not going to do much with it this session. The reason we're building this is to set it up in preparation for our final session where we're going to use remote access to connect to the back-end data. Okay, so let's switch back to our portal and do the last thing in today's session. Okay, so we're back into our new portal. Now, before we proceed, I just want to congratulate you all for getting this far. Thanks for sticking with the sessions. I hope you can see the benefit of them, and I look forward to completing the last one with you next week. So, without further ado, let's go on to our last task for today. So, it's a new area, so a new area dictates that we want a new resource group. So again, if we hold down on our keyboard the G and R, we're going to bring up a new resource group, and let's click on add, and I'm going to go ahead and let's put this into Central US. It's going to be in my Visual Studio Enterprise with MSDN, and I'm going to call this Databases. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create databases. And the tile said it failed, but this said it passed. So let's go ahead and click on here. And we can see that it has, so there's obviously a problem just pinning that to the dashboard. So let's go ahead and try pinning that to the dashboard again. And we can see this time around it's worked fine. So obviously a little issue with the dashboard there, but we can customize and we can make that a 2x1, and we'll just bring that down to the right location. Okay, so sometimes the portal plays up. It's just the nature of the HTML beast. So let's go ahead and click on our resource groups. Let's click on databases, and I want to go ahead and click on add. So we're going to add a new resource. Okay, so from here we're going to go ahead and select database. Okay, we're going to come down and see we've got an SQL database. Now we've got choices here. Okay, we can go ahead and use an IaaS SQL database, whereby it's going to install an operating system and then SQL on top of it. But what we want to do for our demo is we're actually going to use a standard PaaS database. So I'm going to click on SQL database. Okay, and it says this fully managed relational database service delivers flexible manageability, includes built-in high availability, offers predictable performance, and supports massive scale out. Service maintenance is built in, making SQL database the right alternative to cloud-based VMs when resources are scarce. So I'm going to go ahead and hit create. Okay, and we're going to go down and fill in the blanks. So the subscription's fine, the resource group's fine, optional configuration fine. Let's take a look at our pricing tier. So in terms of pricing tiers, it wants us to go ahead and choose our pricing tier. So just like when we created our virtual machine, there's going to be a whole bunch of tiers here, each offering different performance, but obviously with a different price. Now, we're not doing anything that requires any significant performance. So let's come down and we're going to go ahead and select an S0. Now an S0 will give us 10 DTUs, and a DTU is a database throughput unit. Think of it as a performance measurement. It can support up to 250 gigabytes with standard geo-replication. It gives us point-in-time restores and auditing. So for £9.16 a month, that looks like the one that we want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and say select. And then I'm going to come down and let's go ahead and select our server. So for our server, we're going to go ahead and create a new one. Okay, and for my server name, I'm going to call this Cloud and Proud SQL SVR. Okay, so we got our Cloud and Proud SQL server. For the server admin login, I'm going to say student, and for our password, let's go ahead and put a password in. And we'll just go ahead and confirm that. From there we can go and choose our location, and I'm going to choose Central US, and then we need to choose whether or not we want the latest update. So it doesn't make any difference for the demo that we're doing, but obviously be aware of some compatibility issues with older data stores. So let's go ahead and say OK to this and allow that server to create. In terms of the source, I'm going to go ahead and I can choose a blank database. I can choose to import a database from backup, but I'm actually going to choose sample. So there's the AdventureWorks sample database. So it's sample data. There's a whole bunch of information in there, and that's what we'll be able to connect to when we build our remote app session in the next episode. So I'm just going to go ahead and call this Cloud and Proud DemoDB, and from there we'll go ahead and pin that to our dashboard. So we'll just allow that one to create, and that'll take a minute or two, so we'll pause the video and we'll come back when that's done. Okay, so we can see that our database has now been created, but there's a little gotcha to this. In order for us to connect to the database, we actually need to go through the database server first. So I'm just going to close this down, and let's just go ahead and clean this up. So let's go into Customize and make that a 2x1. Okay, so it's okay that. Now before we start playing with the database, I just want to come back into the resource group, and I actually want to select the database server. So I want to go into the SQL server. In fact, let's pin that to our dashboard. Okay, and let's go into our database server, and from here we want to go ahead and under all settings we want to go into our firewall and make sure we're allowed to connect in there. So we can see I've got my client IP address. So I'm going to go ahead and add my client IP address, and I'm going to add that as Baker Home. Okay, so we can OK that and we can save. So we'll just wait for that to update, and it effectively allows my IP address through the Azure firewall and into that SQL server. So that's now done, and what it enables us to do is now connect into this database. Okay, now for people watching the episode, I'm going to show you this using Excel. Now if you don't have a copy of Office, don't worry, because in next week's episode what we'll do is we'll be using Remote App to do the same thing. Okay, so if you haven't got Office, feel free just to watch this next bit, because we will be doing it in the next episode. So what we want to do is we want to look at the database connection strings. Okay, and what I'm effectively after is a portion of this string here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up Excel, and we're connecting to this. I'm coming back onto my main PC, and we're going to go in and we're going to open up Excel. Okay, so with that done, let's do a blank workbook. Okay, and we'll just expand that, and what we're going to do is, let's just close this down. What we're going to do is we are going to connect up from external sources, and we're going to get some data from an SQL server. Okay, so what it wants is the server name, and it's going to want the authentication credentials too. Okay, so let's go back into here, and from here, remember I said I want a portion of this string. Well, what I want is the name of the server. So I want the cloud and proud server.database.windows.net and the 1433. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and go back into my server name and paste that in. And then the username is going to be, and the password, let's go ahead and enter those credentials. So let's say next. Okay, it's now connecting up into the SQL database, and you can see we've got our cloud and proud demo DB, and from here we'll be able to see all of the data that's in that SQL database. So I'm going to come down and select customer and then next, and what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and finish this and select the cell where we want it to go. So let's put it on the first one and OK. And we can see that it'll pull this information down from my Azure PaaS database. The purpose of today's session was primarily focused around Active Directory and Azure synchronization. We began by synchronizing Active Directory into Azure. We then looked at multi-factor authentication and password WriteBack. We understood role-based access control and looked at Active Directory reporting before looking at single sign-on options for applications and portal customization. Finally, we created a PaaS SQL instance with some sample data, and we used Excel to connect into this data set. If you look at our overall network now, you can see that this is beginning to get fairly complex. We have our networking, we have our site-to-sites, point-to-sites, we have a number of virtual machines, we have a web presence using Traffic Manager, and we now have secure authentication into our cloud. Next week we will build on top of this and start populating our development virtual network using some automation scripts and connect into our Azure SQL database using Remote App. I'd like to thank you for your time and look forward to welcoming you next week.